For someone who has campaigned on ending the forever wars, U.S. President Joe Biden now faces a conflict in Gaza. But as Israel's U.S.-backed war against Hamas intensified and Palestinian death tolls mount, a growing number of Muslim Americans and Arab American leaders are warning President Biden that he is losing their support and their community supports in ways that could cost them the 2024 presidential election. Arab Americans, who account for about 1% of the American population, overwhelmingly backed President Biden in the 2020 presidential elections. They were expected to back him again in next year's upcoming elections, but because of his handling of the situation in the Middle East, his support among Arab American voters has sharply decreased, plummeting to dismal and unprecedented numbers. According to a new poll conducted by the Arab American Institute, support for Biden's upcoming re-election bid from Arab Americans has dropped by a whopping 42 percentage points. It has come down to 17% from 59% in 2022. In 2020, the poll found that if the elections were held today, 40% of Muslim and Arab Americans would vote for former President Donald Trump, the Republican frontrunner, marking the first time in the 26 years that the poll has been conducted. The majority of Arab Americans did not claim to prefer the Democratic Party. In its latest evidence, Biden's campaign for a second term in office is rapidly losing Muslims and Arab Americans' support over his staunch support of Israel. These voters have traditionally voted for a Democrat candidate and are prominently in hotly contested states like Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania that could decide the 2024 presidential election.
The president knows that Muslims and those perceived to be Muslim have endured a disproportionate number, certainly of hate-fueled attacks, right, as we talk about what we're seeing here. And so he also understands that many of our Muslim, Arab American, and Palestinian American loved ones and neighbors are worried about the hate being directed at their communities. And so leaders at every level of this administration will continue. We're going to continue engaging with the Muslim community, the Arab American community, and Palestinian American leaders to hear their concerns.
Head of the 2024 race for the White House, photojournalists have once again outed U.S. President Joe Biden's cheat sheet. Biden's note at a recent press conference revealed that the 80-year-old president had prior knowledge of the questions and also the journalists who would be asking them. At a joint press conference with Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, Biden took questions from 4 reporters, all of whose names were featured on his note cards. A similar cheat sheet was spotted when the president had a joint press conference with South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol in April. It had the name and photograph of a Los Angeles Times journalist and also a pre-written question. And what do you know? She was the first journalist to be called on. In the past, Biden has been criticized for having prepared answers at press briefings and holding detailed instructions on how to enter a room and greet participants. The president's slip-ups are another opportunity for Republicans to question his ability to handle unscripted interactions. Former President Donald Trump has often capitalized on Biden's old age as well as his gaps, but former president's own stumbles that started as intentional impersonation of the current president have some comparing the two. The latest episode came at a rally in Sioux City, Iowa. Trump wrongly thanked supporters of Sioux Falls, a South Dakota town about 75 miles away. He later corrected himself after being informed about his error. Earlier, the former president had referred to Iowa as Idaho in an attempt to mimic the President Biden. The former president could not have known that in just a few days later, he would find himself in a similar situation and what some call a crisis with that Sioux City incident. In recent weeks, former President Donald Trump has asked his supporter not to vote, claiming to have defeated President Barack Obama in an election. He also repeatedly mispronounced the name of Hamas. Now his rivals are calling him out. Ron DeSantis has pointed to the instances as signs of declining performance, saying that he has lost the zip on his fastball and is completely different from 2016. But for now, polls continue to back Donald Trump with massive leads. It will have to be seen if his gaps can change the dynamic of the presidential race. However, Donald Trump's verbal blunders does undermine a most potent line of attack, the argument that Biden is too old to be president, or does it?